Comparatives and superlatives. There are two things you need to know about them: how to form them and how to use them in sentences. But before we jump in, what exactly are comparatives and superlatives? Comparatives compare two people or things. Today is colder than yesterday. A superlative expresses that one person or thing has more of a quality than anyone or anything else in that same group. The blue whale is the biggest animal. Hang in there because this video is also packed with language learning tips that you might find helpful. Let me introduce you to Mike and Jack. I'll tell you a little something about myself. I'm a slow eater. A very slow eater. When I have lunch with Mike and Jack, I'm always the last one to finish. I eat slower than Jack. He's fast. I also eat slower than Mike. Notice that when I use comparatives, I use the word than after the adjective. Here I'm comparing myself to one person at a time, but if I wanted to compare myself to both, I'd say I'm the slowest eater. Notice that I don't use than anymore, but I do add the before the superlative adjective. Now let's take a look at how we form them. With adjectives that have only one syllable, there are three things you need to remember. Rule number one. This is the most basic rule. We just simply add an ER to form a comparative and an EST to form a superlative. I'm fast. Jack is faster than me. But Mike is the fastest. Fastest of all of us. Rule number two. Be careful with adjectives that end in E. Since we already have an E, we only add an R to form a comparative and ST to form a superlative. So large becomes larger and largest. I have an apple. Mike's apple is larger than mine, but Jack's apple is the largest. Rule number three. If the one-syllabled adjective has a consonant, short vowel consonant, like hot and big, we double the last consonant, then add ER for a comparative and EST for a superlative, as in rule number one. So big becomes bigger and biggest with two G's, hot, hotter, hottest with two T's. Jack has a water bottle. Mike's bottle is bigger than Jack's, but mine is the biggest. Now, for adjectives that have two syllables and end in Y, we take that Y and make it an I. Then we follow rule number one. Add ER for comparatives and EST for superlatives. Happy becomes happier and happiest. Busy becomes busier and busiest. All three of us have busy schedules. I'm busier than Mike because I work and have a side hustle, but Jack has two jobs and a side hustle. He's the busiest. Having said that, many students ask me, "Teacher, the other day I heard task B is more easy than task A. Does that make it incorrect?" Now I'm going to ask you to bear with me because we can form comparatives and superlatives in two ways. Like we've seen before, adding the ER and the EST, or by adding more and most before the adjective. In many cases, not all, we can use either form. For example, the comparative of healthy can be healthier or more healthy. The superlative can be healthiest or most healthy. I think this dish is healthier than the other one. This is the most healthy option on the menu. What happens is that there's usually a more commonly used form. This is why you might hear task A is easier than task B more often than task A is more easy than task B, but that doesn't make the latter incorrect. Talking about things that are incorrect, be careful not to use both at the same time. We either say easier or more easy, but not more easier. And the same goes for superlatives, easiest or most easy, but not most easiest. Now I'm not going to argue about the fact that those structures are incorrect, but I do want you to see this in a practical sense. If you listen carefully to native speakers, you might catch more easier and most easiest. Why is that so? Well, I always tell my students, native speakers don't always speak perfect English. We make mistakes and we break the rules of that lovely grammar book that you're studying from. So what do? Be an active listener. Compare what you're hearing to what you're learning. Be curious and ask questions too. Because applying what you're learning from the book in real life is important, but the best way to learn a language is by creating a two-way flow. I learn and apply. Plus, gather new information from real-life sources and bring it in. I try to understand it, analyze it, then see what I want to use. Obviously, I'd advise you not to use incorrect structures in your speech, but it's good to know which rules we break, and therefore, you won't be surprised when you hear them. That's just food for thought. Back to two or more syllables. Some words tend to just go with more and most. Here are some examples. Coffee makes me more alert. She looks more beautiful in that dress. This is the most expensive restaurant in town. That was the most boring movie I've ever seen. Now, many people dread the irregular forms of comparatives and superlatives, but take it from me, they're not that bad. Once you learn them, you're done. You won't have to sit there and think about whether it goes with EST or most. Here are the 5 most common irregular adjectives you'll need. Number 1, good, better, best. Some students learn English. They're good. If they practice on a regular basis, they get even better. The students that incorporate English into their daily activities are the best. Number 2, bad, worse, worst. Yesterday, the weather was quite bad, and it got even worse in the evening. I decided to go for a walk at night just to realize that I chose the worst time to leave the house. It was raining, the wind was howling. I should have gone for a walk in the morning. Number 3, little, less, least. Remember Mike? He started a project months ago with his co-workers, and he had little motivation. Weeks passed by, and he had even less motivation than when he started, therefore becoming the least productive person in the group. Number 4, much, more, and most. We went hiking, and the first day we didn't walk much. The second day, we followed our planned route, but we got lost. So we ended up walking more than we had expected, though the third day, we walked the most. Lastly, number 5, far, with the comparatives farther and further, with the superlatives farthest and furthest. I went for a run 2 weeks ago, and I went pretty far. Last week, I ran even further than that. But you should have seen me yesterday. I ran to the furthest point in my city and back. To wrap everything up, don't forget the 2 base rules I mentioned at the very beginning. Use than after a comparative adjective and the before a superlative one. If you like this video, please help me out and share it. Plus, don't forget to subscribe to eLeaper for more content. See ya!